On the 7th of February, 1812, in Portsmouth, England, Charles John Huffam Dickens was born during a period of rapid industrial and social change. He was the second of 8 children born to John Dickens, a naval pay clerk, and Elizabeth Dickens, an educated woman who valued books and storytelling. Although Dickens's early childhood was lively and intellectually rich, it was also unstable. His father lived beyond his means, a flaw that would profoundly shape Dickens's worldview and later fiction. In 1824, when Dickens was just 12 years old, his father was imprisoned for debt in Marshalsea Prison, a traumatic event that permanently marked the young boy. Under English law at the time, families could live with imprisoned debtors, but Charles was instead sent to work at Warren's blacking factory, pasting labels on bottles of shoe polish for long hours in grim conditions. Dickens later described this period as one of deep humiliation and emotional abandonment. Though he rarely spoke of it publicly, it became the emotional foundation for many of his novels, especially David Copperfield and Little Dorrit. After his father's release and a modest improvement in family fortunes, Dickens returned to school briefly, but his formal education was limited. He taught himself shorthand and began working as a law clerk, then as a court and parliamentary reporter. This work sharpened his observational skills and exposed him to the injustices of the legal system, another recurring theme in his writing. Dickens's literary career began in the early 1830s, with humorous sketches published under the pseudonym Boz. These pieces, later collected as Sketches by Boz, captured everyday London life with wit and precision. His first major success came in 1836 with the Pickwick Papers, originally intended as a series of comic illustrations. Dickens's storytelling quickly eclipsed the artwork, and the serial became a publishing phenomenon, making him famous at just 24 years old. Unlike the somber, bearded portraits of his later years, the young Dickens was a flamboyant dresser who loved bright colours and gaudy patterns. He was also an amateur magician, a member of a ghost club to investigate hauntings, and an advocate of hypnosis then called mesmerism, which he practiced on his wife to treat her headaches. That same year, Dickens married Catherine Hogarth, with whom he would have 10 children. Though the marriage began happily, it deteriorated over time, strained by Dickens's demanding career, frequent travel, and emotional distance. The couple separated in 1858, a scandalous event for the era, and Dickens took public steps to defend his reputation even after he began a secret relationship with 18-year-old actress Ellen Ternan. He remained closely attached to Catherine's younger sister, Mary Hogarth, whose sudden death in 1837 devastated him and inspired idealized female characters in his novels. While Charles Dickens did not legally disown his children in his will, his relationships with them were often fraught with emotional distance, public humiliation, and financial control. Dickens grew increasingly resentful of his children as they reached adulthood. He once complained he had raised the largest family ever known with the smallest disposition to do anything for themselves. To ensure they became self-sufficient, he pushed several of his sons into grueling military or naval service in far-off colonies like India, Australia, and Canada while they were still in their teens. He explicitly barred his son Sidney from the family home after the young man fell into heavy debt, viewing him with, in his words, contempt and horror. The most severe disownment occurred during his 1858 separation from his wife, Catherine. Dickens forced a choice upon his children about who to live with after the separation. His eldest son, Charlie, chose to live with his mother. As a result, Dickens' good feelings for his son turned into, as he put it, gradual disappointment. His daughter Kate, whom he nicknamed Lucifer Box, sided with her mother and later wrote that during the affair with Ellen Ternan, her father did not care a damn what happened to any of us. He reportedly barely spoke to her for 2 years after the separation because she remained in contact with her mother. Though disappointment with his children persisted throughout his life, in his final will, Dickens did not cut off his children. In fact, he left the remainder of his significant estate, roughly equivalent to $14 million today, to be divided among his surviving children. Throughout the 1840s and 1850s, Dickens produced many of his most enduring works, including Oliver Twist, Nicholas Nickleby, Bleak House, Hard Times, A Tale of Two Cities, and A Christmas Carol. These novels combined vivid characters with sharp social criticism, addressing child labor, debtors' prisons, industrial exploitation, and legal corruption. Dickens was not a political radical, but he was a fierce moral reformer, believing that empathy and personal responsibility could humanize society. He was deeply fascinated by science and public health, supporting sanitation reform and believing that environmental conditions shaped moral behavior. He was also an obsessive walker, often covering 20 miles a day, claiming that walking stimulated his imagination and helped manage insomnia. In his later years, he was known to have compulsive tendencies, like rearranging furniture in hotel rooms, and reportedly touched objects 3 times for luck. Dickens also became famous for his public readings, performing dramatic excerpts from his novels to packed audiences in Britain and the United States. These readings were physically exhausting but immensely popular, contributing to his status as one of the first modern literary celebrities. Throughout his life full of adventure and oddity, he had a talking pet raven named Grip, who was the basis for a character of the same name in his 1841 novel Barnaby Rudge. It also inspired the eponymous bird from Edgar Allan Poe's poem The Raven. It was said that Dickens would read to his children at night with the bird on his shoulder. When Grip died, he had it stuffed and mounted where it sat on his writing desk. On the 9th of June 1865, Dickens narrowly escaped death in the Staplehurst rail crash over a bridge across the Bolt River in the Kent County, England. With his carriage hanging precariously over the bridge, Dickens climbed out of the compartment through the window and tended to the victims, some of whom died while he was with them. The psychological trauma took a permanent toll on his health. His son, Charlie Dickens, stated his father never altogether recovered from the incident. Charles Dickens suffered a stroke on the 8th of June, 1870, at his country home, Gad's Hill Place, and died the following day at the age of 58, 5 years to the day of the rail crash. Despite his wish to be buried quietly, he was laid to rest in Poets' Corner at Westminster Abbey, reflecting his immense cultural importance. Dickens's legacy is vast. He reshaped the English novel, popularized serialized fiction, and created characters such as Scrooge, Oliver Twist, and Miss Havisham that remain embedded in global culture. More than a century after his death, Dickens endures not merely as a storyteller, but as a moral witness to the human cost of poverty, neglect, and indifference in the modern world.